My brother was left to hang for a crime he didn't do, until a widow whispered, "Not today." The rope scratches against Thomas's throat as the platform creaks beneath his boots. Clara digs her nails so deeply into her palms that blood seeps between her fingers, but she cannot look away. Her brother stands with his hands bound, eyes scanning the crowd like he's searching for someone who might save him. "Thomas James Miller," Sheriff Hayes calls out, his voice carrying across the silent square. "You stand convicted of the murder of Rebecca Walsh and the theft of $47 from her home." "That's not him." Clara's voice breaks as she whispers to herself. "That's not who he is." The sheriff unfolds a piece of paper, squinting at words that might as well be lies written in blood. "The court finds you guilty on all charges and sentences you to hang by the neck until dead." Thomas finally speaks, his voice steady despite the rope. "I'd never touched that girl." "Every man says that," Hayes replies, not looking up from his paper. Clara pushes forward through the crowd, but rough hands grab her shoulders and pull her back. She knows these faces around her. Miller's store owner, the blacksmith, women from church who used to bring Thomas soup when he was sick. Now they watch him die like it's Sunday entertainment. "Rebecca Walsh was murdered 3 weeks ago," Thomas calls out, louder now. "I was fixing Mrs. Patterson's roof. She'll tell you." "Mrs. Patterson ain't here," the sheriff says. "And dead girls don't lie, but Clara knows something else. She's been watching faces in this crowd, and she's seen guilt before. It sits heavily on a man's shoulders and makes him stand too still when everyone else is shifting their weight. Someone here knows exactly who killed Rebecca Walsh, and it wasn't Thomas. You got any last words?" Hayes asks, his hand already reaching for the lever that will drop the platform. Thomas looks directly at Clara, and his eyes are not afraid. They're angry. "The man who did this is watching right now. He thinks he's won," the crowd murmurs, but Clara hears something else. Footsteps moving through the people behind her. Someone pushing forward with purpose. She turns just enough to see a woman in black moving toward the platform, her face set like stone. The sheriff's hand hovers over the lever. Thomas takes what might be his last breath. Clara's heart pounds so hard she thinks it might stop entirely. And then the woman in black opens her mouth and speaks 3 words that will change everything. "Wait," the woman says, and the single word cuts through the air like a blade. Sheriff Hayes freezes, his hand still hovering over the lever. The woman pushes past Clara and steps directly in front of the platform, her black dress moving like smoke around her legs. "Miriam Kane," Hayes says, and Clara hears something change in his voice. Fear, maybe, or respect. "This ain't your business." "Everything's my business when innocent men die," Miriam replies. She climbs the 3 steps to the platform without invitation, moving close enough to Hayes that she has to tilt her head back to look at him. "You're about to hang the wrong man," the court decided. "The court's a joke and you know it." Thomas gasps above them, still balanced on the platform with the rope around his neck. Clara watches Miriam's face and sees something that makes her stomach turn cold. "This woman knows exactly who killed Rebecca Walsh. She's known all along." "Step back." "Miriam," Hayes warns, "make me." Miriam moves even closer, and now she's whispering something that only the sheriff can hear. Clara strains to listen but catches only fragments. Something about evidence, something about the real killer, something about what happens to sheriffs who hang innocent men. Hayes's face goes white. His hand drops away from the lever like it's been burned. "Cut him down," he calls to his deputy. The crowd erupts in confused murmurs. Clara pushes forward, but her eyes stay locked on Miriam Kane. The woman turns and looks directly at her, and Clara sees knowledge in those dark eyes that goes deeper than one murder. Deeper than Rebecca Walsh. This woman has been carrying secrets that could destroy more than just Sheriff Hayes. Thomas collapses to his knees as the deputy cuts the rope, gasping and clutching his throat. But Clara barely notices. She's still staring at Miriam Kane, who nods once and disappears back into the crowd as quickly as she appeared. "What did she say to you?" Clara calls after Hayes, but the sheriff is already walking away, his shoulders bent like he's carrying the weight of the world. Clara follows Miriam Kane down the dusty road that leads away from town. past the old mill and into the hills where the houses grow farther apart. Miriam walks fast for a woman in her 50s, her black boots kicking up small clouds of dirt with each step. Clara has to hurry to keep up. "Why did you save him?" Clara asks, still breathless from running after Thomas when they cut him down. "Because I've seen this before," Miriam replies without slowing down. They reach a small farmhouse that sits alone on a patch of brown grass, surrounded by nothing but empty fields and a sky that looks ready to storm. The paint is peeling off the shutters, and the front porch sags in the middle like a broken back. Miriam pushes open the front door without unlocking it. "Nobody comes out here," she explains, noticing Clara's look. "No point in locks." The inside of the house feels cold, even though the day is warm. Furniture sits covered in white sheets like ghosts waiting to be awakened. Miriam pulls the sheet off a kitchen table and gestures for Clara to sit down. 3 years ago, my husband Daniel was accused of killing a woman named Sarah Mills, Miriam says, settling into the chair across from Clara. "Robbery and murder, just like they said about your brother. What happened to him?" "They hung him." Miriam's voice doesn't change, but her hands clench into fists on the table. "Right there in the same square where your brother almost died today." Clara feels something cold crawl up her spine. "But he didn't do it. No more than Thomas did. How do you know?" Miriam stands and walks to a cabinet against the far wall. She opens it and pulls out a wooden box, old and worn smooth from handling. "Because I've been tracking the real killer for 3 years. Every town he hits, every woman he kills, every innocent man who hangs for his crimes. There's been others. 7 men in 3 years. Miriam sets the box on the table between them. All hung for the same pattern. Young women, small amounts of money stolen, and a scapegoat who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Clara stares at the box, afraid to ask what's inside. And the real killer? Still out there, still killing. Still watching innocent men die for what he's done. Miriam opens the box, revealing newspaper clippings, photographs, and letters tied with string. Thomas was supposed to be number 8. Miriam picks up the wooden box and walks toward the back of the house. "The real evidence isn't in here," she says, pushing open a door that leads to the kitchen. "It's underneath." Clara follows her through the kitchen to a trap door in the floor that she hadn't noticed before. Miriam pulls it open, revealing wooden steps that disappear into darkness below. The smell of damp earth rises up to meet them. "Root cellar," Miriam explains, climbing down first. "Built it myself after Daniel died. Needed somewhere safe to keep what I found. The cellar is small and cramped, lit by a single oil lamp hanging from a hook in the ceiling. The walls are lined with mason jars and preserves. But Clara's attention goes immediately to the far wall, where newspaper clippings are tacked up like a map of death. Headlines blur together. "Local man hanged. Justice served. Killer caught." 7 towns, Miriam says, pointing to each cluster of articles. 7 dead women, 7 innocent men. But how do you know it's the same killer? Miriam moves to a wooden crate in the corner and lifts the lid. Inside, wrapped in an old towel, is a sheriff's badge. But this badge is different from the one Hayes wears. This one is stained dark brown, with what looks like dried blood. "Found this buried behind Sarah Mills's house," Miriam says, holding it up to the lamplight. "The night after they hung my Daniel." Clara stares at the badge, and something cold settles in her stomach. "You're saying the killer is a sheriff? Not just any sheriff, a sheriff who uses his position to frame innocent men while he keeps killing." Miriam sets the badge on a makeshift table made from old boards. Think about it. Who has access to crime scenes? Who controls the evidence? Who decides which stories get believed? The walls of the cellar seem to close in around Clara. Every certainty she had about law and justice crumbles like old paper. Sheriff Hayes? Maybe someone else with a badge. But whoever it is, he's been laughing while good men hang for his crimes. Clara reaches out and touches the bloody badge with one finger. "We have to stop him." Miriam wraps the badge back in its towel and climbs the steps out of the root cellar. Clara follows, but her legs feel unsteady. Outside, the sun has started to set, casting long shadows across the empty fields. "There's something else you need to see," Miriam says. walking toward the back of the property, where the land slopes down toward a cluster of dead trees. What is it? The truth about what they did to Daniel. They walk through brown grass that crunches under their feet until they reach an old stone well. The wooden cover has rotted away, leaving just a dark circle that disappears into the earth. Clara peers over the edge but can't see the bottom. "Been dry for 20 years, Miriam says, standing beside her. "That's what everyone thinks anyway." "What do you mean?" "They told me Daniel was buried in the town cemetery. Had a service and everything. Put up a headstone with his name on it." Miriam's voice gets quiet. "But Daniel never made it to that grave." Clara feels her stomach drop. "He's down there. Thrown in like garbage the night after they hung him. No ceremony, no respect. Just disposed of like he never mattered. But why? If he was already dead, why not bury him properly?" Miriam turns away from the well and looks back toward town, though it's too far to see from here. Because dead men in graves can be dug up. Dead men in wells disappear forever. I don't understand. The sheriff knew Daniel was innocent. He knew because the real killer told him everything. Showed him the badge, probably. Maybe even showed him Sarah Mills's body before anyone else found it. Miriam's hands clench into fists. But the killer wasn't just some drifter passing through. He was connected, protected. Clara stares at the dark mouth of the well. Protected by who? The mayor, the judge, the banker who holds half the mortgages in town. Maybe all of them. Miriam's voice is bitter now. They couldn't let Daniel live because he might have figured it out eventually. And they couldn't let him have a proper burial because that would mean admitting they hung an innocent man. The weight of understanding settles on Clara like a stone. This isn't about one corrupt sheriff or one murderer walking free. It's about a whole system that sacrifices innocent people to protect the guilty ones with power. They walk back to the house in silence, both women carrying the weight of what lies at the bottom of that well. Inside, Miriam goes straight to the fireplace and starts building a fire with practiced hands. "What are you doing?" Clara asks. "Making new evidence." Miriam strikes a match and holds it to the kindling. "The real kind that will actually put the killer away." "I don't understand." Miriam goes to her kitchen and returns with a stack of official-looking papers and a pen with a fine tip. "The evidence I collected isn't enough. Newspaper clippings and a bloody badge won't convince a corrupt judge. But forged documents from the killer himself might." Clara watches as Miriam spreads the papers on the table near the fire. "You're going to fake a confession?" "I'm going to write what should have been written 3 years ago." Miriam dips the pen in ink and starts writing in careful script. A letter from the real killer to Sheriff Hayes, detailing every murder, every frame job, every innocent man who died. The fire crackles and sends shadows dancing across the walls. Clara sits down across from Miriam and watches her work. "What if it doesn't work?" "Then we're no worse off than we are now." Miriam doesn't look up from her writing. "At least we tried." Clara picks up another piece of paper and starts copying Miriam's careful handwriting. "I lost my parents when I was 15, she says quietly. "Thomas was all I had left. I met Daniel when I was 17, Miriam replies, still writing. 28 years of marriage, gone in one night because of a lie. They work in silence for a while, creating evidence that should have existed all along. The fire burns low and they add more wood. Outside, the night settles around the farmhouse like a blanket. Do you think they know?" Clara asks. "The men who covered this up? Do you think they feel guilty?" Miriam looks up from her work, her face lit by firelight. "Men like that don't feel guilt. They feel threatened. And that's exactly what we're counting on." The sound of boots on the front porch comes just after dawn. Clara jerks awake from where she fell asleep at Miriam's kitchen table, the forged documents still spread between them. Miriam is already standing by the window, her face grim. "He's here," Miriam whispers. "Who?" "Deputy Marshal Crawford." Miriam moves away from the window and picks up the bloody badge from the table. "It took him longer than I expected to come clean up his loose ends." Clara's blood turns cold. "Crawford was at the hanging yesterday, standing beside Sheriff Hayes. He was one of the men who would have watched Thomas die." 3 heavy knocks echo through the house. "Mrs. Kane!" Crawford calls through the door. "Need to speak with you about yesterday." "Come in," Miriam calls back, her voice steady. Doors open. Crawford pushes inside, his marshal's badge catching the morning light. He's younger than Clara expected, maybe 35, with the kind of face that looks trustworthy until you see his eyes. Those eyes are cold and calculating as they sweep the room and land on Clara. "Didn't expect company," he says. "Clara Miller," Miriam explains. "Thomas's sister," the boy who almost hung. Crawford's mouth curves into something that might be a smile. "Lucky thing you spoke up when you did, Mrs. Kane." "Wasn't luck." Crawford closes the door behind him and turns the lock. The sound echoes in the small room like a gunshot. "No, I suppose it wasn't. Question is, what exactly did you tell Sheriff Hayes?" Miriam holds up the bloody badge. "I told him I knew who this belonged to." Crawford's face doesn't change, but his hand moves to the gun at his hip. "That's evidence from a crime scene. Stealing evidence is a serious offense." "So is murder," Clara says, standing up from the table. 7 murders, Miriam adds. 7 innocent men hung for crimes you committed. Crawford draws his gun in one smooth motion, but he's not fast enough. Miriam already has a shotgun pointed at his chest, and Clara realizes she must have grabbed it while Clara was sleeping. "Drop it," Miriam orders. "You think pointing a gun at a federal marshal is going to end well for you?" "Better than it's going to end for you." Miriam's finger tightens on the trigger. "Daniel's watching from that well. Thomas is alive because we stopped you. And Sarah Mills and Rebecca Walsh and all the others are finally going to get justice. By noon, Crawford hangs from the same rope that nearly killed Thomas. The town square fills with people again, but this time they're watching justice instead of murder." Sheriff Hayes reads the charges with a shaking voice, and when he gets to the part about 7 innocent men, Clara hears someone in the crowd start crying. Thomas stands beside her. The rope burns on his neck, already starting to heal. "It's over," he says quietly. "For us, maybe." Clara looks across the square to where Miriam stands alone, watching Crawford's body swing in the wind. "Not for her." After the crowd disperses, Clara and Thomas walk with Miriam to the town cemetery. It's a small place, overgrown with weeds and marked by weathered headstones that lean at odd angles. Miriam carries a bundle of wildflowers she picked on the way. "Daniel's stone is over there," she says, pointing to a simple marker near the back, even though he's not underneath it. They stand in front of the grave that holds no body, and Miriam places half the flowers on the empty ground. "I know you're not here," she whispers, "but now everyone knows you were innocent." Thomas clears his throat. "What will you do now?" "Keep watching." Miriam turns to face them both. "Make sure this never happens again in this town or any other." Clara nods. "We'll help you. You sure about that?" "It's dangerous work, going up against men with badges and power." "They almost killed my brother," Clara replies. "They did kill your husband. And they would have kept killing if you hadn't stopped them." Miriam places the rest of the flowers on nearby graves, markers for people whose names she doesn't know, but whose stories she understands. "Then we make a promise. Right here, with the dead as our witnesses." The 3 of them stand together among the headstones as the sun starts to set. Clara thinks about Crawford, hanging in the square, about Daniel at the bottom of the well, about all the innocent men who died because good people stayed silent. "Never again," Miriam says, and her voice carries across the valley like a prayer and a threat all at once.